Okay, so for extra marks, what we're going to be doing is I'm also going to be showing you guys how to make objects that have very curved surfaces or have certain areas that are ever so slightly inset into them. So what I'm going to do is just focus down on making this type of object over here. And many times when we're making this stuff, I might build it a little bit differently from this one over here. But what I'm going to do is grab this edge over here. And if I started off with a single plane, I can also model using this plane like this over here. So you see that I can very quickly grab something like this, like that. And what I can do is now use extrude using the move tool instead of just the extrude tool by itself, and you can see that I can extrude this outwards like this. Now if I grab these two edges and hit extrude as well and just move them down like this, I can also make little blocks and pieces like this as well, because this face over here, using target weld, I can actually grab vertices and I can just connect these vertices together like this, and that's what's going to allow me to make these type of shapes that you can see over here as well, which is similar to what we're going to do over here. So again, you can use the tools to build many different types of objects as well. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to keep using this pattern over here. If you guys want to leave the sides off, that's fine as well. And what we want to do again is make this little type of insetted shape over here. Now there's many different ways that we could attempt this, but again, if I wanted to divide this into regular parts, the best tool for me to do that is again the connect tool. So I'm going to go into connect, adding two segments over here as before, and I'm going to turn the pinch down to 0. So with no pinch, this shape is the same size as this one, which is the same size as this one over here. And I'm going to press enter over here. And again, what I'm going to do now is just add in some connections, which again, you can do with connect, or I can just go into the insert edge loop tool and grab a loop like that. I might have to, now that I use the insert edge loop tool over here, grab these vertices and actually move them maybe into a more logical place. So I'm going to grab those two vertices like that and move these down like this, so everything is still subdivided in some regular type of way. I'll do this on the other side as well. Okay, so again, sometimes don't trust that things will just go in the right place. Move them as and when you need them. So again, if I come over here and I go into the insert edge loop tool one more time, I'm just going to click on it like that. And again, just by moving that edge, that's now going to make it a nice regular pattern like that. So again, now I can choose a completely different set of things. And I could extrude this as well, but let me show you another way of building shapes as well, which is if I cut a hole into an object, again, by selecting the faces, and in face mode, select them, press delete on your keyboard, you make a hole. Fairly simple. You can grab these edges over here and you can extrude them down as well. Now to finish the shape off, I want to show you guys another two tools as well, which we've used before, one of them, but one of the things that I can do is just use this bridge tool to connect this gap from here to here. So I can select those two edges, hit bridge, turn down the number of subdivisions to 0 over there. We've created just the inside of this part over here, press enter, and then if I select an edge over here and I go into mesh, let me just tear that off for a second so you guys can see, there's a tool that's called fill hole, and I can just fill in that gap over there, grab this guy over here, fill hole, and again, that is exactly the same thing that we were doing before. Okay, so what do I need to do? Again, after you've made something, it's always a good idea to look how it looks like on its smooth preview, like this. And what's going to happen is I've got all of these cuts over here, and I need to start reinforcing them again. So what I'm going to do is come over here, and I'm going to start using a combination of the connect and the insert edge loop tool to just achieve that. So again, I'm going to go back to connect for the interior side of this, and what I'm going to do is again just use that pinch option and the middle mouse button to drag that to the sides like that. Now I want the edges around these sides, so everything that's pointing towards camera, to have two sets of subdivisions, but I also want to have a smooth curve down here as well. So I'm going to have to change this ever so slightly. So I'm going to click over here, press connect and add 2 sets of subdivisions, which is great. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to double click here and shift and double click, and do another connect. So again, I'm adding 2 sets of subdivisions, 2 sets of subdivisions on the other side. And when I'm smoothing this out, you're starting to see that I've got the smoothness of this curve coming in here, but I don't have any solidness to this part over here. So this edge is still very soft, and this edge is still very soft as well. Now, one of the things I want to draw your attention to is that by grabbing these edges at the top, you can really have a very close coordination of what this curve looks like. If you want it less curved, you can move it down. If you want it more curved, or to very strange properties like that, you can push all of these things out. It's really interesting to look what shapes you can create just by moving these sets of curves around, because you might discover something that you didn't think was possible before. So again, I'm just going to put that down as a novelty factor. And I'm going to look at all of this over here. Who said 3D modeling was difficult? By all means. So what I want to do is add edges, but I want to add them in the right place. So I'm going to go into the Insert Edge Loop tool, and all I want to do is just reinforce certain parts of the model. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add an edge round the back over there, okay? And then what I'm going to do is add an edge down here at the bottom as well, and hopefully that will start reinforcing everything the way that we need. So I'm going to press 3 over here, and I can still see that I'm starting to get my nice smooth curves, but here's where things are going to start getting a little bit difficult for us. If I come over here and I start adding subdivisions that go across this curved area, you're going to see that we're going to lose that smoothness. So if I came over here and I clicked right up here and added a subdivision all the way up there, and I added a subdivision all the way in here, we're going to make a solid hard edge. If I take one of those out, just because I added a hard edge that I need over here, you see what happens? All of this edge has just pushed all of that up. Again, so I've gone from this nice smooth curve, and I've added a division here, and I got the solid edge that I wanted for this part, but I've ruined this part over here. Here what we have to do is use some sliding across the edge of the side of this object here. Because what I need to do is not only create the subdivisions, I also need to be able to have a little bit of control of this curve. So one at a time, what happens if I grab these edges over here at the top? I'm just going to grab them like that. And again, it's easier to do one set of curves at a time. And I'm going to grab that edge there. I'm going to turn on my edge constraints as we did before with edge slide. And now you'll see that I'll be able to slide this curve up and down my edges like that. So when I go into smooth mode and I start moving this down, I am going to recover that shape that we were talking about before. So again, I'm just going to place it kind of like in the lower area of this over here. And what I need to do now is the same thing across this other curve over here. So I'm going to go into the Insert Edge Loop tool again, and I know that I need another set of curves here and here. So what I'm going to do is add this one, which should not cause me any problems like that. Again, I'll just undo and redo so that you guys can see that there again in smooth mode. I'm going to come into here and I'm just going to add an Insert Edge Loop tool, and this part here isn't curving, so that's not going to give me a problem. But if I add a curve here, then we're going to have a little bit of a problem. So again, I'm going to come into here, look into the inside faces. I've got an edge over there, and actually I should be able to actually move that edge up a little bit like that. Just make it a little bit tighter, again thanks to edge slide. And what I'm going to do is go again, Insert Edge Loop tool, come into here, and if I grab the right edge loop, come on, where are you? Nope. Okay, this one I might have to cut out manually. Let's see what happens if I grab this one here. I have some strange projection of my edge loop. Okay, cool. When you run into problems like this, never panic. What we're going to try and do is come into here and we're going to start using maybe the connect tool or the multi-cut tool to get the connections that we need. So what I'm going to do is I need to think where I want this connection to be. So I'm going to go into the selection tools and I'm going to select all of these edges here. It's probably this edge that I moved now that's giving me the problem, but I needed to move it anyway, so I need to keep working. So I'm going to hit connect, and I'm going to take the segments down to 1, and I'm going to confirm that. And I'm just going to move that here to the edge. This is where I want that edge to be and live. So I'm going to come into here and I'm going to double click here, and it does seem that it's going to be fairly happy with telling me that, hey, you've selected all of these edges here. Let's see what happens when I hit the connect tool, and you'll see that I get this edge that comes in over here. Now I'm guessing this edge is actually fairly close to where I want the edge to actually be, even though it looks all weird and squiggly from the side. Because if I hit 3 again, I am just going to erase this by going to Control Z. You'll see that that curve that I've got there is still working. So sometimes if the insert edge loop tool is not working, we have to go ahead and use a different tool. And all I'm doing is just choosing where do I want these cuts to come into. So I'm guessing that the insert edge loop tool would give me probably everything that I would need if the line was straight, but the connect tool is actually going to work better for this connected area because it's going to take all of these edges and split them 50% like that. So I'm just going to leave that like that, and then I'm going to take this edge over here, and again I'm going to do a ring on the other side, double check what I have selected, again like that, hit connect, see if I get any unpleasant surprises, and nothing happens, so that is not a problem like that. And to finish it off, just to get it to this bottom point over here, what I'm going to do is again go either into any mode where I can actually see the dots a little bit better, so I'm going to hit vertices, and I'm going to use the multi-cut tool to cut from this point over here to that point there, push enter, and that is going to make my curve beautifully straight like that in between edges. Hit 3 to smooth it all off, and there we go. So I've got a lovely curve over the top of my object, and because connect actually gave me the average already, so it put my cut right in the middle of my selection, I don't need to move these edges at the top. It already gave that for me. If you are not terribly happy with this type of edge over here because it's going all over the place and you would prefer something straighter, there is a technique as well that I can show you very briefly, that if I select multiple vertices like this and I use the scale tool and I scale them in the Z-axis, you're going to see that they're actually going to go fairly straight like this. Now this is really handy, especially because I've got my edge slide turned on like that. So I can grab all of this and I can actually move this as well, and the all of these edges will slide across this surface. So now I've taken all of those edges, which were a little bit all over the place, and now I've just organized them like that. Now again, this is an optional thing that you don't really have to do, but because again, you know, this object looks okay the way it is. But if you want to be a little bit tidy or just figure out how this actually works, sometimes having a good visual model for what you're doing is very useful. So again, I can select all of these vertices, having my edge constraints turned on. I can use the scale tool and I can scale all of those edges on one axis by themselves. And you'll see that at one point it will look like they're going into another direction, but they are almost perfectly straight like that. And again, I'll just use the move tool. Thanks to edge slide turned on, they will all line up beautifully like that. And I'll just turn that off just so that you guys can see what happens if you don't have it turned on like that. And again, I can smooth that out, and there we go. Object mode turned on. I have this beautiful inset over here of this object like that. I think I've got a little bit of pinching up there, so I'm going to have a look and see what's happening, just in case I've got a missing edge or something that I did not see previously. I'm just going to look at that, but that's all four-sided. Maybe it's these vertices here, so I might have to come into here and grab this vertex over here. Grab that. Let's press 3 on my keyboard. I'm just going to move this round there just a little bit, and that's going to look a little bit better. Like that, like that. There we go. And again, there we go. And this is all kind of like very nitpicky stuff, you know, because again, you can push verts around forever, and eventually you will find a nice shape for them to actually sit and rest like that. So again, that's that shape finished over there. So let's move over to something that is round and slightly more challenging. You're going to see that it's going to be very similar to the ones that we made before. Now, sometimes we want to make objects that have multiple pieces, like this one over here. And it's important that when you've got an object that's quite complex, like this one, that we actually break it down into some form of easy part. So even though you're looking at this subdivided version of it, over here, what we're going to do is start adding some more detail over here. So I'm not going to model every single hole over here. I'm going to use some things that Maya has, which is quite useful for me. So what I'm going to do is grab this, and I need to start adding a few subdivisions in some places. So because I've got already an edge over here that I can reuse quite easily, I'm going to take that edge there and I'm going to hit a nice handy bevel, except that I'm going to make sure that this bevel is small enough for me to get two edges like this. Okay, I'm just going to press enter for now. What I want to do is grab this middle ring over here, and I'm going to scale it from the center of the object. So I'm going to press R on my keyboard, and I will scale it down like that so that it is below this circle over here. And then I'm going to double click on this one here, and I want to try and put it as close as I can to those vertices there, just like that. So I'm aligning kind of like this octagon with this section of my circle over here. So what I did was I made a circle that had, I think, about 20 subdivisions. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on one side, another 10 on another. That number is going to be important because I'm going to play with it later on. And what I'm going to do is select these four faces over here by themselves, and I'll go into the select mode, and I will go to inverse. So I invert my selection and I just press delete on my keyboard. This is all I need to build this object over here, and I'll show you how. Before we cut a circular shape into a square, and this four-sided object is very much the same deal as well. So what I'm going to do is just zoom into it over here, and I'm going to start using the multi-cut tool to do the same thing that we did before, just to cut the octagon into this shape here. Now, if I did all of my scaling correctly and I didn't modify the shape of the circle, that means that this should hold up fairly nicely. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to click on that, click on this. It's the same type of cut that we made before for the circle inset over here. Okay, and this now is what's going to make my little nut over here for all of these cutting pieces over here, right? So it's the same theory as before, cutting a circular shape into a semi-rectangular type of object. But I'm now going to replicate this multiple times. So we can do this at any point, but I always suggest to people to cut in a little bit of detail first, and then we're going to duplicate this in a very particular way. I'm going to grab these faces over here as we did before, right? And what I'm going to do is again use the extrude method of cutting in extra detail. I'm going to hit extrude and switch straight to the scale tool to add a little edge there, and then I'm going to hit the extrude tool again, and this time I'm going to use the move tool like this. I'm then going to scale this down a little bit so that it's a little bit inset into the actual surface. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to move that in there, and then I'm going to do another extrude and another scale like that. The last thing that I'll do is switch to edge mode, grab these guys over here, so I'll just do a ring selection over there, and with that ring over there, again, handy little connect tool with two segments, and I'll just change the pinch on that just a little bit like that, and I'll press enter, and there we go. So if I smooth this off, you see that I have kind of like the same thing that we had before. But the power of this tool is now that we can actually start multiplying the shape in kind of interesting ways. So with this selected, I'm going to go into the low poly display by pushing 1 again, and what I want to do is actually go up into object mode over here, and what I want to do is that I want to take this object over here and I want to copy it multiple times. The reason why I want the object version of this is in object mode I still have the object's original pivot point, the center of the actual circular shape that we had at the beginning. So if that's the center, I can actually spin this round, and you can see that it does like a 360 loop all the way around. So if I can duplicate this multiple times, I can actually make an entire ring of this little shape that I've just made. So to do that, I'm going to go into Edit, and I'm going to go into an option which is called Duplicate Special. And I already had this set up previously, but so you guys can see the settings that I use. In Duplicate Special, click on the little box down here, and that will open the options up for Duplicate Special. Now I said I had 20 segments of this. So what I want to do is make 9 copies of these segments, and I want them to be copied 10 times, so 36 degrees all the way around my scene. So if you input these settings into Duplicate Special, where the rotation X and Y is 36, and you make 9 copies of this object and hit apply, you can now create this beautiful ring of objects like this. And I'll just hit close, because now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, many different objects. And what I'm going to do is just select all of these guys by clicking and dragging on them. And what I'm going to do is go into Mesh and choose the panel which is called Combine. So with the Combine tool, I put all of these objects into the same mesh. But here is the thing that I want you guys to do very quickly, which is preview this, and you'll see that all of these edges, they're actually just connected to one another like this. Okay, so they're all separate. They're not connected in any way. Now, I can spend a lot of time trying to put all of these vertices together, because if I select one of these and I move it around, you see that there actually is 2 vertices in this section, and that's what's not allowing me to connect things up together correctly, so I can smooth things. I can select individual vertices and go into this Edit Mesh tools over here, and there's a tool here which is called Merge, and Merge will take points that are close together and it will weld them together. So now if I grab this point over here and I move it, you see that even the standard setting for merge would connect those points together. But all of these other edges are separate. Now we could spend a lot of time going around and merging all of these vertices together, but I want to show you guys below the arrow tool, there's this little selection tool over here that has this little lasso to it, really handy. So I can go over here and in my top view just click and drag on all of the vertices that I want to weld together. Now I could do this for the entire shape as well, but because I've got already some detail here, sometimes I want to be a little bit more precise with my selections. So I'm coming here, just going around. Careful when you make multiple selections because you can deselect things very easily. Okay, so again, another little thing about Maya, if you reselect something, it deselects it. If you select it again, it'll be selected one more time. So be careful when you're making multiple selections. So again, in my shaded view, this is the view that I had. But as soon as I hit merge, now they're all connected together, except for this one over here that I did not connect together, which again is fairly lucky because it allows me to show you a little mistake that I did there. And now if I select this, let me go back to smooth view and hit merge again, bang, it is all connected up together. So again, this little shape here is really going to be handy for us to actually make very complex shapes in no time whatsoever. So I took a very simple shape, I replicated it a number of times, and then I can just spend some time in edge mode and actually replicate any other shape that I might want to do. The outside, I can click here, I can go into extrude, and I can just go downwards like this, and you see that I get a rounded edge type of version like that. If I grab these, ring them, hit a connect like that, press enter, now I start getting a solid edge around there like that. And if I went into the inside of this over here, again I can go ahead and I can start adding another edge loop. Again, if I wanted to change this ever so slightly, because I've noticed that I missed an edge over here, I can actually delete this top edge over here, and actually probably a bevel would be a better way of adding a hard edge to this. But again, for time, I'll just leave it like that for now. But again, you could bevel all this edge around here and that would work much better. Again, if I was doing this from scratch, another thing I could do is I could do an extrude like this, just to add a little inner ring, like that. Do another extrude, and push downwards a little bit like that. Oops. Let me just make sure that I'm in smooth mode. Go into move, push this down, scale it a little bit, and now this interior ring over here, I can just come in here, double click, do another connect, press enter, smooth that out, and there we go. We have this other shape done as well. If you want any interior rings, well, keep extruding like that. But you'll see that very quickly we can create this amazingly rounded surface with lots and lots and lots and lots of little detail. So again, it's the idea of taking a complex object and breaking it down into parts. And then as soon as you've done the blocking for those parts, everything becomes much more easier. So, last shape. Thank you for making it this far. Okay, this is the type of shape that we're looking to make, and you can see that it is not going to be that difficult for us to replicate in any way, shape, or form. So, what I'm going to do is come over here, and I'm going to go into my object, into my edge mode over here, and again, I'm going to build this very similar to the way that we built this part over here. Grab ourselves this edge over here, move this, grab here, and now do an extrude. Change to my move tool, move this down like this. I'll leave the back opened like that, grab these two edges, press extrude, move them down, and again, just go into target weld. And this is a good example for me to show you that target weld actually works with edges as well as with vertices as well. So even though I'm in edge mode, I can click from edge to edge, and target weld will still work perfectly. Now, importantly for us, we still want to do our blocking. I still want to come into here, and I still want to grab this here, and I want to do connections all the way through. Like this, and then just spend a little bit of time making the correct connections like that there. So I'll start off with this edge over here, like that. Now, if I want to manipulate these curves in any way, sometimes I'm going to make connections that I just want to be able to cut at a later date. So what I'm going to do is just grab this connect tool over here. So again, looking at this in blobby mode, shall we say, what I'm going to do is take this face over edge over here, and I'm just going to add another connect across the surface of this, like this, because that's going to give me a little bit of fine control of how round this surface is. And for this example, I'm just going to push this out a little bit like that. Okay, so now that I've introduced a slightly different curve, how can I start creating this type of inset over here? Well, again, block out the area that you want to work with. So if I've got an edge that goes over here, one of the things I can do is I can either add a bevel, and that's already going to start creating the average shape that I want to actually have here, or I can come ahead and start using different tools for me to actually start, you know, building this in as well. So if you wanted to delete faces or do anything there, fancy there, you can go ahead and you can start creating those things for yourself, no problem whatsoever. But again, sometimes it's just good to take these areas, delete them like this, and then we can start making some edge selections like this. So with these edges selected, I can now start again, maybe doing a little bit of an extrude, move them down a little bit, use a scale, maybe in this direction. And again, if you can't grab something specifically, we can always come into our vertices and select one of those interior vertices and just move them with the move tool back like this. Again, this is being a little bit more freeform than before, but it's just a case about being able to use whatever tools you have at your disposal to actually just be able to start roughing in those shapes that we might want to be using like this, okay? So again, what we're going to end up with is very similar shapes than what we to what we had before. But I'm going to add a little edge over here. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select these two. I'm going to go to bridge. I'm going to connect those together. And I'm going to bring the bridge down to still have this little edge over here like that. And what I'm going to do now is just push that edge upwards like that. So I'm going to get this shape over here, a little bit like a W, where I've got an edge which is inside, one that rises, one that falls, and then I can take this here and I can go to mesh, fill hole, and that will fill this area up over here. Now that we've gotten to the end of the blocking, again, it's a good time to look at my edges like that. And you'll see that what will happen is I'll come over here and I can start adding other different types of subdivisions to all of this as well if I wanted to. So with this edge set up over here, what I want to do is start adding some hard surfaces. So again, I'm going to come into my top edge over here. I'm going to go into bevel, and I'm going to give it a tiny value over here, this time 0.2, and I'm just going to give it 2 segments there. I'm going to look at this when it's shaped up like that, and then you see that I have this nice smooth part over here. And I press enter, and there we go. Nice hard edge over there. Now I'm going to want a hard edge for the bottom as well. So I'm going to double click, and you'll see that that will select that there. I'm going to double click there, and again I'm going to apply the same bevel down there as well. So again, I'm adding subdivisions, I'm still working with quads, and let me just put that down to 0.2. There we go. And again, check with smooth mode, and there we go. I've got this wonderful smooth part over here. Now, sometimes we might want to create an edge that's just a little bit either smoother or harder in a specific point. And you'll see that what we have here, again, is this idea that we've got this curve over here. What happens if I want to manipulate this curve just a little bit more? Well, one of the things I can do is start adding some more edge loops over here, again by using the multi-cut tool. If I come over here and I just click to here, and you can see that I can actually cut all the way through with the multi-cut tool, and it will try to do as straight of a line as it possibly can. So I can come into here, and now all of those are straight edges like that. Again, I can come into here, I can click to an edge over here, and I can click all the way down to there, right? Because currently I've got this type of curve over here, which is not really kind of like too sexy or too amazing. It's actually really made things look not as smooth as they were before. But I know that by making the right selection choice over here, I can change the shape of this curve, and I can just art direct it ever so slightly. So with this edge selected over here, what I'm going to do is actually do this either with edge selection turned on or vertices, and what I'm going to do is just grab all of these vertices over here, and this time we're going to try and move them across like this. Now if you turn on edge slide, you're going to see that it will only allow you to move multiple edges across this edge over here. And if we turn on surface slide over here, you're going to see that we get a very different effect, where now we're going to be able to move all of these polygons along this existing surface like this, which again, this is great if we turn on our move tool, because now I can actually very easily change the shape of this curve. So if I want it wider than it originally was down here to give me kind of like a wide edge here and a narrow edge over there, the edge, the surface constraint instead of the edge constraint is going to follow the flow of that curve over there. So again, if I need to make multiple selections of edges, vertices, sorry, let me zoom in a little bit more like that, and I want to move them over a surface to maintain my shape, again I'm going to come into here, I'm going to do a surface slide like that, and you're going to see that very easily I'm going to be able to move this curve, and I'm going to try and match it on both sides. Actually, I think I moved these guys a little bit too far, so I'm actually going to go back a little bit like that, and again I'll check it in low poly version as well. So you see that what I've done is change that shape there. Now I've got an n-gon in here, but if I hit multi-cut I can come here, and now that's four-sided, that's four-sided. There's a little bit of foresight in all of this as well. But the last thing that I need to do is just add some insert edge, add a little bit of some edges to the sides of this as well, so that they're not so rounded. So all I need to do for that, again, is just either use the insert edge loop tool or use the connect tool, or any other combination of those tools per se. So I'm going to come into here, I'm going to go down to my connect tool, and what I'm going to do is just grab these edges over here, and we'll see that that will make a connection like that. But if I keep clicking like this, you'll see that I can do a connection down in this area like that. So again, if I come here and I hit my connect tool by default, you'll see that it will try to project the way that I'm going, but as I make more individual selections, it'll start adding all of these edges like this. Now the last thing I want to do with you guys is just show you another tool that we can go into more detail in future, but there is this tool here which is a symmetry tool, and this is really cool because if I grab the symmetry and I turn on object X over here, it should allow me to manipulate one side of my model to another like this. But when I was making some custom cuts into this object over here, what I've done is that I've changed the left hand side ever so slightly from the right hand side. Hopefully Maya should be smart enough to have this other option over here which is called topology. And if I specify to Maya that this is the topological axis, this is like the middle part of my object, if I select now these edges, you see how they highlight blue on either side? I can actually grab these edges and I can manipulate both sides of the object at the same time, which is going to save me a lot of time. So with this topological axis chosen instead of object X and turning on edge slide, I can very quickly grab both of these edges and I can move them outwards like this. They'll constrain to the edges like that, and then I can pull them back like this, and now they are perfectly straight like that. Also notice that I've got a little triangle over here as well, so I'm just going to press enter there, and what I'm going to do again is just do a quick target weld in vertex mode, and I'm just going to go vertex to vertex, vertex to vertex, which looks like it was just a cut that I missed on that side because it's fine over there, and now I'm going to smooth that out, and that will be the end of my object like that. So I've just built a little ridge in here, rounded it off down the middle. If I wanted this edge to be sharp, I can bevel it as well. So I can come into object mode, into edge mode, add a bevel there. But that is more than enough for you guys to build all of these shapes over here. And if you have an understanding of how to use the Maya tools and how to use your topology, you can just make almost anything that you can actually imagine. So I hope you've enjoyed all of that. Work on these as much as you can, but I'd almost recommend in your spare time do these tutorials a few times and try to see if you can actually come up with this idea of hard surface modeling. I'm going to be leaving a link below to Grant Warick's whole tutorial series about hard surface modelings. I can't recommend it enough. It's amazing to actually go through that step by step, and you learn so much from actually doing it. He's got a version on Vimeo and he's got a version on the area as well that is different. It's a little bit older, but I'd recommend you guys learn as much of this stuff as you can and check out the links in the page below. Okay, so with that, I hope you've learned a few things and not gone too crazy with us, but again, watch these things and go through them step by step as many times as you need, and have a good time modeling. Bye bye.